recognition or rejection, why she can't love a man who refuses the struggle. Hegel once said, self-consciousness exists in and for itself when, and by the fact that, it so exists for another, that is, it exists only in being acknowledged. In modern language, this means one brutal thing. If you don't fight for recognition, you don't exist. Not truly, not in the eyes of others, and certainly not in the eyes of the woman who is slowly losing interest in you. When a man tolerates everything, accepts everything, avoids conflict, and bends to every emotional current in a relationship, he becomes invisible, not because she can't see him, but because she no longer feels him. According to Hegel, the self becomes real through opposition, through struggle, through claiming space and asserting itself in the presence of another. And this is where most modern men fail. They confuse tolerance with virtue. But Hegel would say, there is no freedom in submission. When you allow disrespect to go unchecked, when you nod in silence at manipulation, when you fear speaking the truth because it might upset her, you abandon your own spirit, your Geist, and in doing so, you cease to be worthy of recognition. Why? Because you no longer stand as a self. You have become the slave in the dialectic. And make no mistake, she feels that. In Hegelian terms, desire is the desire of the other's desire. In relationship dynamics, this means a woman desires a man who demands recognition, who brings the full weight of his sovereign identity to the interaction, not a man who sacrifices truth for comfort, not a man who agrees to everything and asserts nothing. She doesn't even consciously know this, but emotionally she senses it. This man fears confrontation more than he fears losing himself, and that, to her, is the greatest red flag. In Hegel's world, love is not passive. It is not peace at all costs. It is the synthesis born out of struggle, contradiction, negation, and reconciliation through truth. So if you think avoiding conflict will win her heart, you misunderstand the very structure of real relationship. The absence of struggle doesn't create harmony, it creates stagnation, and stagnation suffocates desire. Your silence may buy temporary peace, but it costs long-term respect. And Hegel makes one thing clear: recognition must be mutual. But it begins with one party demanding it. So the question is simple: will you remain the passive man, quietly hoping she sees you while you disappear inside your own fear? Or will you do what Hegel's master did, assert your will, take the risk, and demand to be seen as a full subject? Because without that, love decays, attraction dies, and respect vanishes. Not because she's cruel, but because, in the Hegelian sense, you no longer exist. The struggle for recognition. Why polarity requires conflict. Hegel does not romanticize human connection. For him, the self, the very soul of a person, emerges only through conflict, through contradiction, through the pain of negation. What does that mean for you as a man? It means the relationship cannot grow, and she cannot desire you, unless there is struggle. But not senseless drama, not emotional chaos. We're talking about existential tension, a push and pull of two real individuals, each standing in the fire of their own truth, each demanding to be recognized not as a servant, not as a passive vessel for comfort, but as a sovereign being. This is the very heartbeat of Hegel's master-slave dialectic. He writes that when two consciousnesses meet, they do not immediately unite in harmony. They battle, they clash, because each seeks to be acknowledged. Each wants its self-certainty confirmed by the other, and only the one willing to risk everything, even life itself, wins the higher recognition. So, ask yourself, have you risked anything lately? Have you made her feel your presence, not through volume or control, but through will? If you're losing her, it's likely because you've slipped into the role of the slave, afraid of disapproval, afraid of tension, afraid to say, no, that's not okay. In Hegelian logic, this is a tragic betrayal, because the man who won't struggle to be recognized will not be recognized at all. And the woman, sensing no resistance, begins to despise the void where your masculine core should be. She stops testing you because she's already gotten the answer. He won't push back. He won't hold the line. He's safer than real and less alive. And here lies the paradox. She doesn't want constant war, but she also doesn't want unconditional peace. She wants a man who meets her energy not by collapsing, but by challenging it, who refuses to surrender his integrity for comfort, who does not flinch in the face of her emotional storm, but instead stands as a mountain in the chaos. Hegel teaches us that synthesis, the union of opposites, can only happen after negation. In other words, only when two real selves collide and survive the heat of honesty can they form a bond worthy of the name relationship. So if you've been avoiding hard conversations, giving in to every demand, shrinking under pressure, you're not avoiding conflict. You're avoiding love in its most authentic form. Because love, real love, is recognition between equals, and there can be no equality where one has erased himself to maintain the illusion of harmony. The tension you fear is not the threat, it is the path. When you choose to tolerate everything, you deny the dialectic, you remove the struggle, and without struggle, there is no development, no growth, no movement, and ultimately, no desire. So fight, not with fists, not with rage, but with presence, with truth, with the fire that says, I exist, I will not vanish for your comfort. That's when she sees you again, not as a boy seeking approval, but as a man worthy of recognition. Negation, not niceness. Why the masculine is defined by limits. In Hegel's logic, becoming is never smooth. It is not comfort, it is not ease, it is rupture, opposition, and most of all, negation. The capacity to say no, to resist, to define oneself against something else. And here lies the death of modern masculinity. Too many men believe that being nice is being good, that being agreeable is being virtuous, that going along with everything is the price of love. But Hegel would laugh at that illusion, because in his system, the self does not become itself by merging into others. It becomes real by saying, I am not you, by asserting contradiction, by drawing a boundary, even if it causes tension. In a relationship, this shows up every time a man refuses to confront what makes him uneasy, every time he bites his tongue, every time he sacrifices his clarity to preserve peace. And what he doesn't realize is that in Hegelian terms, negation is not destruction, it is creation. Without no, there is no I. Without resistance, there is no individuality. Without challenge, there is no recognition. So, when you allow everything, when you're infinitely tolerant, endlessly agreeable, you cease to be a man in her eyes. You become a shadow, a soft echo, a presence that lacks the very thing the feminine craves: opposition, tension, edges. Masculine energy is not formed through softness. It is formed through limits. You must be the structure around her chaos. You must be the wall she can throw herself against, not to break you, but to feel that you can't be broken. She doesn't want you to submit to her emotions. She wants you to contain them. But you cannot contain anything if you can't say no. And here's the truth no one tells you. The man who can't say no is not kind. He is dangerous. Dangerous to himself. Dangerous to the relationship. Because his resentment will build in silence. His self-loathing will grow behind fake smiles, and eventually that suppressed truth will explode, or rot. Hegel warns us, the spirit that refuses conflict does not grow, it does not evolve, it stagnates. And stagnation, for both the masculine and the relationship, is death. She feels it. She may not have read Hegel, but her body understands dialectic. She pushes you not because she wants to dominate, but because she wants to feel your limit. She wants to meet the man who is not moved by her storms. The man who can say, I love you, but I will not lose myself for you. That is the man she respects. That is the man she desires. So stop confusing niceness with strength. Niceness without boundaries is emotional self-erasure. It is the surrender of the masculine form. Be kind, but only from your center. Be generous, but from choice, not fear. And above all, negate what insults your soul. Because according to Hegel, the only man who becomes something worth recognizing is the man willing to stand against what seeks to dissolve him. Synthesis or separation. How recognition is reclaimed through self-assertion. In Hegel's system, development is not linear. It moves through thesis, then antithesis, and finally, synthesis. But here's the uncomfortable part. You don't get the synthesis without the fight. You don't get harmony without contradiction. And you don't get real love without respect. By now you know this isn't about becoming more agreeable. It's about becoming whole. A man who sacrifices his voice, his edges, his limits in the name of keeping her happy will not end up with love. He'll end up forgotten, because a woman may tolerate your niceness, she may enjoy your comfort, but she will never respect a man who refuses to struggle for his being. This is the Hegelian reality. You are either recognized as a free, autonomous self, or you are consumed into the desires of another. There is no neutral middle ground. So what now? You must become the man who forces the synthesis, not through aggression, but through self-assertion. You must be willing to say, "This is who I am. This is what I won't accept. I love you, but I will not betray myself to keep you." You must reintroduce friction, not to cause drama, but to reclaim polarity. Because here's what she really needs to feel safe with you again. She needs to know you're real. She needs to know that behind your eyes is conviction. Not just attention, not just approval, but a spine, a soul, a line that cannot be crossed. That's what reignites attraction, not neediness, not apologies, but the man who can say, "I will meet you, but I will not follow you into the void of my own abandonment." And if she doesn't want that man, if she still pulls away, let her, because the man who lives in truth is never alone. He may lose her, but he will gain himself. And in Hegelian terms, that is the only thing worth gaining, because when the self reclaims its place in the dialectic, when the man stands again after negation, synthesis is no longer about her. It's about a man fully formed, fully grounded, fully seen by himself. And paradoxically, this is when she finally sees him again, because the man who does not tolerate disrespect, who speaks with calm force, who leads with principle, is the man she can relax into, not because he controls her, but because he is untouchable within himself. So you have a choice. Keep tolerating and keep dying quietly, or assert your worth, face the rupture, and finally stand whole. That is Hegel's gift. Conflict, collapse, clarity, recognition reborn from resistance. This is not the end of your relationship. This is the beginning of you.